What is up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm doing pretty good. Tonight, we have an interview with Paulogia, and we're going to be having some fun tonight. Paul, he used to be a Young Earth Creationist, and he, made his way out of that and into atheism. And so we're here to hear his story tonight and really kind of learn, what brought him out of the Young Earth Creationism. Because, that's not only what Paul deals with like every fucking day, but it is also what I deal with every fucking day as well. Well, now we have Paulogia, and I really want to thank you, Paulogia, for coming on. We're only going to be on about maybe an hour or so. Just depending on how in depth we get into, talking and whatnot. But I figured maybe you want to introduce yourself, tell people about your channel, what you do there, and then kind of lead into, what role religion played in your life, like your early life.
Sure, absolutely. And you can call me Paul, even though my channel name is Paulogia, and I like to be... Shush! I have a puppy. Even though I go by Paulogia, obviously, on the channel, you can call me Paul for tonight's purposes, because that's a weird thing to say over and over again. Also, because I'm here, I really just wanted to say, God damn it, fuck shit, because I can't do that on my channel. So, with all that out of the way. Yeah, so I have, most people would probably know me from my YouTube channel, which is called Paulogia, Paulogia. Which is a take on the Greek word apologia, which is, of course, what Christians use. They say that's their academic defense of their belief. And since my name is Paul, and I also want to take an academic defense against their belief, I figured it was a good play on words. Although I've now learned that it was a mistake because no one can spell it or pronounce it. So, but too late.
I don't know. I usually don't have a hard time spelling it. I mean, sometimes my fingers get a little ahead of themselves, but other than that, it's usually pretty good.
The good thing is, if anyone's searching for it, there's no one else using it, so it's that's a bonus. I'm not like a Godless glasses guy, because Godless is just kind of generic.
Oh, thanks. Throwing me shade. God damn.
I know.
Well,
first of all, no. You were the first person to ever invite me on your channel and let me do something weird on your channel. So thank you so much for, not turning me away, in those early days.
Oh no! I loved your content. As soon as I saw your first video, man, I was just like, you know what, this guy's gonna get big really quick, so I need to snag him like right now.
Cool. I forgot what the initial question was. I was so excited about being able to curse somewhere.
Okay, so we're starting off here with what role did religion play in your early life, like your childhood and stuff like that?
So I grew up in a Mennonite home. If you know what Mennonites are, that's great. If you don't, think about the Amish in the movie Witness, but sort of jump forward about 50 years. So the Mennonites are basically have the same kind of society as the Amish do, but they don't eschew technology so much. So the Mennonites would have like tractors, and they would have irrigation and things like that. That actually ended up making them a little bit more rich often than their Amish counterparts. But they still kept a lot of the things. So the Anabaptist roots, the modesty, the gender segregation, speaking German, being very separate, whole like colonies completely separate from the rest of the society, stuff like that. So that's my background. Now, fortunately for me, I was my parents left that society basically when they got married, right around when I was born. So they decided they wanted to go to university to become teachers. So I was still, that's my heritage. And I was raised in a lot of those ideas, but fortunately I wasn't on a colony. I lived in a city because my dad decided to become a school teacher. So, but I was raised Mennonite. Everything was church. We were at church 4 times a week. Wednesday nights, Friday nights, Sundays mornings, Sunday evenings, and then just whatever bonus times there were. My parents were the Sunday school superintendents. My dad eventually became moderator of the church, which is essentially the head of the church. Just it was completely saturated everything I was in. And then when I was a teen, we actually made a big move across town. It seemed big at the time. And sort of looking for friends, I became involved in a program called Bible quizzing, which was at the Christian Missionary Alliance Church, which was like this progressive thing. But they're also fundamentalists. And I spent my teen years memorizing the Bible and competing on it at an international level, which is this really strange, weird thing to think about now. But not only that, I won scholarships from there to go to Bible school. So I went to Bible school after high school, and I became a youth leader, not as a profession, but as my lay ministry. So I was a youth leader for a few decades, teaching other kids to memorize the Bible. So I have had thousands of students that I worked with to do Bible memorization and deal with them in youth group with. So anyway, church was everything. When I came out of it, everyone I knew, all my business partners were Christian. My family was Christian. I didn't know anyone who wasn't a Christian.
Wait, can I stop you real quick?
Please, yeah. Sorry, I was rambling.
So you legit studied the Bible, memorized it, so that you could be crowned the best Christian ever?
Correct. Now, it's funny when the whole competition, because they have to try to mix in competition, so it's very cutthroat kind of a thing. But that's not very.
I don't know if that's the best use of words there. Cutthroat in the Bible. I mean,
it was this strange dichotomy that you're trying to beat other people, but at the same time you're all supposed to be showing God's love on stage and all this. It was this weird forced thing to try to make these super competitive kids, display good sportsmanship, I guess. But there's a good spelling bee, but it's like the Bible,
right? There's a really good question in the comments asking what version of the Bible was it, King James? Because I mean, that's actually really impressive if you memorize the King James.
So interesting. I'm not going to give the year I started. The year I started was the first year they did New International Version. Prior to when I started, and Bible quizzing started in the 60s, they did do King James. I was fortunate that it was NIV, New International Version, their 1984 version. So no, I got to at least learn normal English, and it was somewhat usable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt. So
we rambled up to. Thinking the question was basically what was religion in my life, and I think you can kind of get a sense that it was very pervasive.
You had kind of left off where you were a teenager. You had a lot of students under your memorizing tutelage.
And I guess that was as an adult. That was sort of after college. I went into youth ministry, so I've just been working with teen ministries, most of my adult life. And then I have 3 kids, all of whom are currently Young Earth Creationists, which is a whole nother, which is actually why I have my channel. But we can get into that in a bit, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't you take us through like what got you like questioning? Actually, before we get there, I kind of got a little ahead. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what was it like for you being a youth minister and all that kind of stuff? Like, did you go on like I don't know if they have mission trips, or what was it like? Did you have like youth trips that you went on and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never did do the overseas mission trips. I was actively having a career similar to yours. I'm a software engineer by day. And I think some of you may know that like I worked for Lucasfilm for a while in San Francisco. So I was actively having this career, which didn't quite let me do the overseas trips. But with the Bible quizzing program, we had every year we would be going to nationals. So the nationals would be all over the United States and Canada, everywhere from Atlanta to New York to Redding, California to Texas, Minnesota a bunch of times. So there was a lot of travel with the teens involved with that, but it wasn't the overseas mission trips. That said, my ex was a missionary kid, and so she would definitely do some of that kind of thing. But I generally stayed home because work and career.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so why don't you take us like through like what got you questioning, or at what point, did you start to question, or what did that process look like?
Yeah, I think the questioning started after I left Lucasfilm. Um, I had a few months that my negotiated with my ex to, I'm just going to try and figure out life, right? I'm just going to try and figure out what I want to do next. It was a big career move. She had her job lined up, so I was just going to take a while to do it. And a buddy and I started a comic book company, graphic novel publishing company, and the story that I was working on was going to involve dinosaurs and humans being alive at the same time. Now, as a young Earth creationist, it's weird. I didn't really clue in that was supposed to be. I didn't know the extent that I knew vaguely that was supposed to have happened in the Bible, but that wasn't what I wanted my story to be about. I wanted my story to sell really well, and so I wanted it to be this alternate Earth. So I figured I can't just go with my facts that I know. I figured I need to at least look up what these evil evolution people think. Right? I wanted to be able to pepper in a few details. Specifically, I wanted to know how long ago that you crazy people thought that the dinosaurs had died. I didn't actually even know that it was 65 million years. Despite being a dinosaur enthusiast as a kid, those two things never came together. So I had to look it up, and I looked up 65 million years, and I started looking up at other details, and those started actually planting seeds in my head. It's like, man, this is really different than what I've been brought up to believe. And it seems kind of credible. So that was sort of the seeds of it, was that graphic novel. If anyone cares to look it up, it's called Neozoic. You can get it on Amazon. But that was the seed of it. And then for a couple of years that I let that percolate, and it let it gnaw and gnaw. And of course, I think a lot of us who came out of it are familiar with the phrase cognitive dissonance. And that's really what I felt for a couple of years was this cognitive dissonance. At the same time, I was doing some visual effects work for a motion picture, which stopped. And when that job was done, I had another couple month break. And I decided, you know what? This has been really bothering me. I'm going to go find the very best scientific Christian claims that are out there. I was just going to go find them and absorb them over the couple months I knew I was going to be off. And then I could just be free. That it would be like, oh, I don't have to worry about this anymore again. Now I know all the answers to these questions as they relate in the Bible. So I picked up, Googling which are the best ones. I picked up the Answers books by Answers in Genesis. So if you guys anyone's familiar with that ministry, they have a set of 4 books. It was 3 at the time, that ask the basic questions. Where did Cain get his wife? And all the little, how did kangaroos get to Australia? All these little questions that you're supposed to, how did all animals fit in the ark? So I was like, this is the best book. I'm just going to read this, and it's going to be great. So I start reading it, and I could feel my jaw drop as I read through. And it's like, I don't know anything about science. I've just accepted based on authority everything I've ever been told. But this is crap. Like, this was shit. These answers, I knew nothing, but I could tell these were wrong. And the one I kind of laughed. The one where I remember throwing the book in the air was the one I mentioned, was how did kangaroos get to Australia? Because literally the answer was kangaroos probably jumped off some logs and floated there, because a lot of logs float around in that area. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I didn't say that at the time because I wouldn't have been allowed to say it. But I threw the book up in the air, and that was when I decided, okay, I need to at least read the other side now. Like, the other side, which I never would have dreamed to go look at. I'm like, well, what do they say? Like, if their answers are just this bad, maybe no one knows anything. So I started picking up, Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and all that kind of stuff. And I was in way over my head, of course. But it was just immediately obvious to me that Young Earth Creationism, I didn't give up my faith, but Young Earth Creationism was a joke and garbage. It took me 6 months or so to plow through all that stuff. And I hadn't even figured out the YouTube part of it yet, that there was, communities that could help me. So I'm like, okay, this can't be true. And this is a big, big problem for Adam and original sin. That was where my head was at. And not only that Adam and original sin, but Jesus specifically referenced Adam, like according to the Gospels he did. and Paul as well in his writings. And so, well, like if this was a big metaphor, then those two didn't get the joke, right? Those two didn't. They thought Adam was a literal figure, and I grew up fundamentalist. The Bible was inerrant, so when you do that, the smallest chink, and all of a sudden it's nothing. Suddenly it crumples, because I think for those who grew up maybe more liberal Christian, and that some of it's allegory and some of it's not, you can probably reconcile this evolution thing. But for me, it was all falling apart. So then I started saying, well, where did this Bible book even come from? I went through Bible school, and I was top of my class, and I learned, where I thought all this stuff kind of came from. And I started studying the scholars, and I actually even called up Bible school professors, and they're all like, oh yeah, we know Moses didn't write those books. And oh yeah, we know half of the Pauline epistles are forgeries. And we like you guys know this, and you don't tell your students, you don't tell people from the pulpit. I kind of was spiraling at this point, because like nothing that I'd been raised to believe was holding any water of any kind. So it was that second piece, investigating the Bible itself, that made me an atheist, even though I jokingly call my first video, Ken Ham made me an atheist. Ken Ham really made me know that Young Earth Creation was crap, but that sent me then to investigate further. And then I got into mythicism for a while. I was like, oh, maybe Jesus mythicism is a thing. I've now kind of backed off from that, only in that that's just an intellectual exercise that I can enjoy on my free time. But my primary mission, my primary thing that keeps me going is all of the people who are basically left behind, of all the people who I know who are still young earthers, including my 3 children. So shortly after it took about a year for me to admit to anyone, and that was my spouse, that I thought I was an atheist. And in fact, it's funny that Casey was talking about Seth Andrews. Seth Andrews was the person who made me realize that there was a label for what I was called. He was doing the Josh Farstein $100,000 challenge thing at the time. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And I'm like, oh, atheist, that's a word. That's a word I can use. And I guess we had that debate yesterday. Anyhow, so once I admitted to someone that I think I might be an atheist, that set a big spiral of events that I wasn't in control of. That I was outed without my own permission. My pastor advised my ex to kick me out of the house. I lost business associates. I lost basically everything. And shortly afterwards, I was diagnosed with some illness. So I had this whole real whirlwind of shitstorm that happened after I came out. But once I kind of got my footing again, I have a really great relationship with my kids again. But they are uncomfortable talking to me about the religion thing. It's just not something they're comfortable talking to me about yet. But I know they will be someday, because our relationship is good. But because of my health scare, I was also like, I don't know if I'm going to be around to tell them what I want to tell them. So I started a blog, but that wasn't really adequate. So I started my YouTube channel. And my original plan was to tell my 3 kids everything that I would want to tell them in case they aren't open to it until too late. So that's how Paulogia came to be. Obviously, I have some kind of passion for animation and visual style, and that stuff all interests me. But that's, I guess, a long version of the answer to your question.
No, I enjoyed it. I think it's pretty awesome that that's kind of how you centered your channel. I would have never thought that that is kind of who you're speaking to in it. But I mean, you do a really good job of it, and I mean, I think you do really well on your channel. Yeah,
and I would say, to address earlier, that's partially why. Now, ham and eggs is a whole separate thing. If anyone's familiar with my channel, I do a ham and egg news show, and that's kind of for me to be a little bit snarky. But all the science videos, you'll never hear me swear, because I know that as a fundamentalist Christian, the first time you hear the word fuck, you don't hear a single thing after that, right? Like nothing then it's just, that gives them the excuse that everything after this is evil and horrible, and it's just a mad person and they're bad, even though obviously in a different language, a different word would set you off. But so, that's partially why on my channel you're going to see that sensibility. You don't see me get old Earth creationism, for example. If my kids become that's fine. So you kind of see me not attacking as harshly as some of you guys do. If you think about the audience as my kids, it may explain what I'm doing a little better.
Well, no, yeah, well, I mean, it does, but I mean, to me personally, I think everybody has their own style, and I guess for my channel at least, it's like an outlet for me. And my in my outlet, I usually just like to laugh and curse and make dick jokes.
Oh yeah, and
hashtag blood dick oath, guys.
Well, there's a place for that. The place for that is for I needed people like you and the Living Dinosaur and Logic and all you guys who were totally ripping apart what I used to hold sacred. I needed that so badly. I needed someone to attack it viscerally and to give me permission to do the same and to essentially to kill it. Like, I think you guys are probably not converting too many set in their ways people, but once people have admitted to themselves that they're on a spectrum, I think that the message you guys give is so valuable. Like, I needed it. It was critical for me. It's just not where I'm focusing right now.
Well, and I mean, obviously, your niche, your audience that you really gear your content towards is, pretty large. I mean, you've been able to grow on YouTube a lot. I mean, people love your stuff. You got a really wide reach.
Yeah, but of course, funny for me, I don't really care actually that there are any atheists. I would love to know, and we can never know this. I would love to know how many of those people are theists and how many are not. Some people suggest, well, just get your thumbs down, and those are probably all the theists. But anyway, as I'm sure you do, I think probably all of us do, we get the same stories. People are messaging me privately, regularly, that I'm helping them in some way or another, and that definitely makes the all-nighters worth it when that happens. So much more than, YouTube demonetizes half the time. So, that we're not here for the money. We're in here for other reasons.
Right. And as far as like my content goes, it's something that you had said. I'm more here, like, the audience that I'm really gearing toward are already atheists. I've always said that they're like already atheists because, in my view, like, I guess there's nothing that I can say to a creationist or whatnot that will get them to change their mind. It's kind of like what you said earlier when you were working on your comic book, that those seeds were planted in your head, and then you were the one to convince yourself. I don't know if you would describe it that way. I don't know. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't have a community per se that was, I didn't know the YouTube part of it existed. So very much it was me figuring it out. I think, though, you're probably right. If someone had come and approached me, I'm not sure that I would have. You're right. I needed to walk through it myself. What I wish I had more, and what I try to emulate a little bit, and there's evidence that I am, is that I wish I had role model people that had come out. I wish I had known some people who had left, so that I could have known what the path looked like. So there's value even in just demonstrating what it looks like when someone comes out.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I'm kind of curious. You mentioned how when you revealed to your spouse and your friends and whatnot that you were, an atheist. I'm kind of curious. Like, I know that you said you ended up losing them, but I was wondering if you could kind of give us examples of what their reactions were to this news that you felt like you were an atheist.
Sure. I talked a little bit about my spouse and my kids. So let me, my sister, when she found out, I was not willing to talk to anyone until I knew that until I had enough ammunition for my sister, because I knew she was going to attack me. And sure enough, as I said, I was outed. I didn't control my own information. So one day at work, all of a sudden I got the first text: why are there still monkeys? And what about polystrate fossils? And just, the rapid fire Gish Gallop via text of someone who didn't say, "Hi, it's Kim. Hi, I heard anything." It was just the attack. Oh, I shouldn't have said her name. It doesn't matter. She just attacked me with every Facebook meme you can imagine. And I was prepared for that. And frankly, I might have been disappointed if she hadn't, because I know in her mind, I was going to go to hell, right? And her way of loving me was to try to save me from that. Most of the people I went to church with just cut me off, just stopped talking to me, stopped interacting with me completely. And in a way, that is more insulting, because like, you guys think I'm going to hell and you don't, now that someone else, like I wasn't a big deal, but I was on stage. I was the worship leader. I was a lot of those things. So I was a very I was a golden boy in the church. So I certainly think that they almost had to cut me off, right? Because if Paul could go, maybe anyone could go. So in a way, I understand that, but in a way, I'm kind of insulted that none of them are trying to, a lot of those people are not trying to win me back. So I had both. And then I had my parents who were trying their best to love me. I think much like, obviously, we never want to diminish or what an LGBT person comes out when they come out. I'm friends with a lot of those people. I think they've given me permission to say that the stories are similar, because some of them have come out as both. My parents tried to treat me like, oh, now our son is one of these atheists. He really tried to beg me not to use that word, because that word is very scary. But more than that, I asked them the simple question. I said, well, how are you going to feel in heaven when your son is in hell? I said, how will it be, how will you be eternally happy that way? And that really shook them. And they had to go back and read a lot of books. And my father has since become basically a nihilist. He stopped believing in hell. He now believes that, all of us sinners will just, cease to exist, which makes me laugh. It's like, well, you held this other theology for 60 years and now all of a sudden it's your son. Well, I'm just going to change as if his theology somehow makes one or the other true. So it was interesting. And my parents have very much supported me. My dad found out about this channel recently, which was an interesting conversation, which is going to be ongoing. It's one thing to be, lost myself, but to be dooming other people along with me is a little scary to them. But no, in a way, like I was very, and then I had no one, right? I had no friends, I had no family. I had to go find something to do. So if you've ever heard of CFI, Center for Inquiry, I was just looking for anything. So I found in my local town, they have their skeptics in the pub, and it happened to be a Tuesday when I could go. So sorry for my puppy. I can't quiet her now.
You're fine.
Anyway, so I went to a skeptics in the pub meeting, and like instantly, and then the weekend after that, like they had invited me. Oh, well, Matt Dillahunty's speaking at our thing, the next week, and so suddenly I was ushered into this whole skeptic community that didn't know me from a hole in the wall, and were suddenly inviting me places, and that was wonderful as well. And that's something else I've been trying to hope with. I'm working with a group called Living Without Religion here in town, which is kind of like a clergy project, but for lay people. And like I was blown away by the much, much kinder reaction from the secular people than the church. I'm not saying all people in the church obviously are bad and don't exhibit that love of Christ, but I was startled by people I thought were eternally with me who weren't.